Also, she kind of sucks. Sorry, not the element she's a hot girl and everything, but if the mold on her body is so deadly that you touch it, she should be covered up completely. Not like the most naked person you've ever seen. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Stoneface Reactions. I'm Theta, there's the finger, and we're back with some more Gnosia. Let's see. As usual, we come back with the normal. We've got notes, we have a board, and we have some comments. So let's go ahead and hit up that board first, where I really think I'm going to have to do something about the layout idea. Obviously, horizontal all the way is good when you're looking at the image of it, not so good when you're looking at the whatever you would call this. I might have to, ironically, follow me on this joke, loop around and start a second line or something. Unless there's some element of the game or show wherein different loops will reconnect with one another, in which case, I don't know. Anyway, I do have the board changelog as normal, where I color-coded the loop names to show fails and wins. So we have red for failure, green for success, and white for Yuri dies before the end. And I guess I should also mention, obviously, white is undetermined, so the latest loop should be white as well. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. Loop 5 was Yuri dying to Rakio, right? Yeah. Loop 5 was Yuri dying to Rakio. Loop 6 was Yuri dying to Setsu. So, I was confused for a moment because sometimes I think I may have failed, and this time I didn't. So, loop 5, I added Yuriko, Shigemichi is frozen, Rakio is a Gnosia, Yuri is dead, and as we learned at the end, SQ was the engineer. Loop 6, Rakio and Stella were frozen, Setsu was the Gnosia, and SQ and Yuri died. And then we ended up on loop 7 at the end, where added 2 new characters, as of yet unnamed. So yeah, I have my notes, and after the notes is when we hit up the comments. So that's just to make sure that anything that I thought isn't going to get repeated or be very confusing by a comment section preceding it. The problem I think that I'm going to have, and clearly have been having this whole time, is the fact that it seems like details don't matter, but reading people does. And by that I mean like noticing small tidbits of, say, backstory or things that the character does, like nervous tics or takes pills or drinks coffee, that stuff. Versus when I'm saying reading people, I mean like personalities, like they don't feel right in this scene or things like that. That is a skill I am wholly incapable of attaining. If it were just details like who does and doesn't drink coffee, I could be all over that. But since details can change every loop, and y'all have said that it's more important with their personalities that they stay the same, and that's the thing to focus on, then I have to wonder if I haven't created myself a Sisyphean task of documenting all of their traits that can and will change, specifically to the many worlds interpretation of the timelines that Rakio presented with us. I'm reminded of a fun little movie called A History of Time Travel, which is shot in a documentary fashion about the history of the creators of time travel. Except there's also this whole struggle to control time travel going on within the story of the movie. So the details and events of the documentary keep changing as time changes with the actions of the people in the documentary. This show kind of has that very same feel to it, just that this is a more first person and in your face. So, like in History of Time Travel, you'll be interviewing, say, a NASA scientist or something about the moon landing. And then at one point, there just was never a moon landing, so they're just interviewing some other guy in the same segment. Or, time keeps changing, but the documentary changes with the time, and no one has the perspective of being outside time to recognize that things are changing. So you, the viewer of the movie, have to recognize what's changing and when the story goes a different way. I like that I thought of last episode if people would be removed from the ship, or if we would just get more crew members as the show went on, culminating in the entire cast. And then this episode addressed it. And of course, I was wrong. I've been right as often as Rockio at this point. I would say I should do the opposite of whatever my instinct says, but the moment I would, I know that the thing I'd be wrong about would be not to follow my instinct part. Either way, I said they probably wouldn't remove crew members because it might hurt things to suddenly lose a fan favorite or some nonsense like that. And here, Gina, a character we gave focus to for an entire episode, never made it on board the ship. So props to the show for doing something I didn't think it'd have the guts to do. I always appreciate when shows can pull the trigger on things, even though at the end of the day, there is no consequence to that, since we know she can come back later, as per everything that we learn in this episode. It's also interesting that it doesn't seem like the number of players determines how many Gnosia there are, given that Loop 3 and 4 had 7 crew members and 2 Gnosia, while Loop 5 also had 7 crew, but only 1 Gnosia. I guess technically also Loop 6, but that wasn't in the episode grouping that I had taken the notes for, obviously. Yuriko seems to be the force of personality character. She's essentially done what Rockio tries to do to Yuri every loop, but this time without a whole spiel about trying to make someone look guilty for any reason. Someone mentioned stats in the comment section. I have to assume she's got max charisma or something, as opposed to Rockio's max intelligence. Something I wish I had started doing, and unfortunately it's a bit late to go back and redo due to my workload on the channel. In case y'all didn't know, I do everything. Is that I wish I had numbered what episode we learned specific details about each character in. And if you look at the board, sorry, I'm head gesturing towards the screen. If you look at the board, I have started adding numbers in front of my notes so that I know what episode they came from. So if it turns out by the end of the episode that is a Gnosia version of the fact, I'll know that. Maybe I can color code it or something. I don't know. Let's see, where was I? As I think some of my information is wrong now. Not wrong in the sense of it being meaningless due to the loops changing things, but meaningless in the sense that some of it was learned while certain characters were the Gnosia. And it seems like Gnosia gained intel is worthless, to a point, I guess, considering this episode's entire conceit. But like Stella being rescued by Yuri and falling in love with him seems entirely to be an artifact of the Gnosia's lie, and not something that gets carried over into other rounds. You know, every other time Stella's been around, she hasn't been in love with Yuri and claimed to have been rescued by him. It would have been nice to have isolated that information from the rest to try and analyze it through later loops, but I didn't. But it also makes me suspicious about Setsu's information from the episode, considering it comes from a Gnosia Setsu, and every previous version of Setsu would have possibly been going through the loops as well, as I suggested early on. And none of those versions said anything. It was the Gnosia version that said something. So, something to read into there, I think. I gotta wonder if SQ is just like a vat baby, a clone, or something entirely different. At first, the subs say that she's only been out in the world for 1 year, so okay. My first thought is that she's led a sheltered life and just got out into the universe a year ago. But no, she said she's only 1 year old. Granted, maybe she still means my first thought and is saying it in a weird way, but maybe it's a literal, in which case, a plot point for sure. Also, odd alignment of facts, since later we find out that Setsu has been looping for a year. Could it be that SQ has also been looping for a year? That Yuri and Setsu aren't the only ones in the loops? That SQ is just so carefree about it because of the stage of acceptance that she's at in these loops? It would also go a ways towards explaining her constant being on Yuri, that he might be the last one she needs to know stuff about. Just a theory. I wonder if Yuriko's people might not worship or pray to the life form that's giving Setsu and Yuri the ability to loop. Her statement of knowing nothing could refer to how he has so much further to go in filling in with the knowledge, and distortion could be referencing the thing itself. I don't know why, but I might be starting to think that everyone is trapped in their own specific loops. So new normal now is that we get to see the final stats of the loops, as far as in as we were anyway, before starting the next loop. Interesting that the one time Rakia has actually been the Gnosia so far was also the one time. Uh, sorry, I think I must have written these notes. Well, actually, I was in a lot of pain earlier. Sorry to break the fourth wall and start talking about my real life or something. I was in a lot of pain earlier, and I took some pain medicine, and I think I must have taken my notes on the show when I was on the pain medicine because there's so many typos I'm just skipping over and whatnot. But then I get to this line where I've written down, interesting that the one time Rocky has actually been the Gnosia so far was also the time that they were the Gnosia. It's like, what the fuck does that sentence mean? I know what I meant. I meant that the one time that Rakio didn't vote for Yuri or didn't do this whole song and dance about Yuri being the Gnosia was the time Rakio was the Gnosia. So, one of the few times that I've been right, I think I brought up in episode 1 or 2 that if Yuri loops back to the start of each day, then it would seem like they should still have their time loop thingy as well. By which I meant Setsu. I didn't implicitly write that down. And then why didn't it get activated when they went into cryo? Because we've seen Setsu go into cryo plenty of times. And now we have the answer. They do. And I guess the implication is that looping is a personal consciousness thing. That after you loop, the timeline that you just left remains and continues on as you move to the next timeline. I could have sworn we'd see Yuri get cryoed before, or that we had seen Yuri get cryoed before, but it just occurred to me that that was a scene in the opening only. Either way, Setsu would have conceivably moved on to the next loop after, leaving Yuri to finish it until he looped. Meaning that each of these failed loops that we've kept track of on the board still exist. I imagine loop 3 was Stella and Gina killing SQ and Yuri, and then the ship blowing up as no humans were left on board. And if we ever went back, we'd be looking at debris floating in space. It's interesting that while Gina was giving Yuri a tour of the most interesting places on the ship for entertainment, that they didn't visit the holodeck for some reason. I mean, maybe they did and I just don't remember. But I remember the workout room and the game room, and I just don't remember any time in the holodeck. So in Loop 6, Setsu indicates that they like places filled with people, then blushes when Yuri points it out. Knowing that this Setsu is the Gnosia, I have to wonder if every element of this was a lie. Did they blush where normal Setsu would have felt nothing? As per the conversation with Rakio before, in a previous timeline anyway. And that this was the tell? Does Gnosia Setsu like crowded places because the Gnosia, sorry, I'm just stuttering through. Because the Gnosia likes crowded places? How much of what a Gnosia-infected person says and does can be inferred to mean anything about the original? I know the element is that they're supposed to be copies of the original that are then influenced by what the Gnosia wants. Or just the mannerisms, the knowledge and everything the Gnosia has. But the element of the Gnosia lies. How much? Because it certainly doesn't seem all of it is a lie. And then you get to that territory of the best lies are filled with half truths and everything like that. And then I don't know how far to take it. That's all. I need to learn that part. The fact that Setsu seems to know the exact number of loops that Yuri is on seems to indicate that they have been in those same loops, just not revealing themselves as looping. My inference from that and their conversation about filling the key with information to get out of those loops is twofold. At some point in the future, there will be a perfect match that will get everyone free, which will likely be set up by Setsu in order to leave the ship, and to leave the loop, once they've collected all the information to fill the key with, without having to move on with regrets about how many people died or were frozen, or finishing the loop in a worst-case outcome. Or two, eventually Setsu will know nothing about the loops and just become another character in the loops that Yuri is in, as the looping Setsu completes the task, as it were, and we are left with a normal Setsu with no knowledge beyond the specific loop that they are in. Sorry, a thought occurred to me while I was reading that one out, and thankfully it was still in the back of my head as I finished the note. There could be an element at play that I didn't take any note of, and I think now is maybe a bit too far away from anything to make anything of. Obviously, Setsu starts earlier in the day than Yuri does. Yuri wakes up on the pad, right? But Setsu is already there, meaning that clearly Setsu wakes up somewhere earlier in the day than Yuri does when they join the loop. So I have to wonder if there's maybe an element of when Setsu gets taken out in the previous loop versus them waking up earlier in the next one. Like any time that Setsu has been cryoed, right? Cryo-sleeped, and then they wake up in the next one, versus the times where Yuri wakes up and Setsu is not the first person he sees. And is there any correlation between Setsu being taken out early Setsu not being taken out early and Setsu being there at the very end versus Setsu not being present in the beginning of a loop? Something I'll try to think about later on as time goes by. The element of the key needing info seems to really change the entire conceit of the show and the game. I feel like, anyway. Death no longer matters, the consequence of any loop that isn't the last one no longer matters, so long as the characters don't recognize the timelines they leave still exist, as per my previous note. All that matters is filling the key with information until it's full. Then the game matters and you solve the Gnosia problem. But by then, you should know all of the characters inside and out, and the Gnosia side of the game should just be a piece of cake. Unless the Gnosia finds you out and kills you, but again, by that point, you should know enough to be able to subvert them by then. Really, this could just become one of those slice-of-life games with a horrible twist, except that every episode of Gnosia is just the twist episode, over and over again. I guess there are just some facets of characters that don't mean anything. Like, I believe it was Loop 4, where Gina appeared to be a good cook. Then in Loop 6, the dining area is filled with smoke because she just burned everything, leading me to believe that this might be a Gnosia Gina, as it went against existing evidence I had about her. At the same time, when evidence was presented that fit what I had, it also didn't help my case. In this case, I'm talking about Rockio and their pills, in the same loop that they turned out to be the Gnosia. So sometimes we get information about what a character is good at, or does, or needs, that also appears in an episode where they are the Gnosia, and I rely too heavily on that information, which is why I'm just still wrong all the time. If Setsu is looping, and became the Gnosia by looping into a world where they were infected, that could, obviously, mean that eventually we'll get a timeline where we'll experience things from the Gnosia perspective as Yuri. Which could be super interesting, and I have no reason to think that the show wouldn't go there. The one confusion I have about it, though, is why the Silver Key would let that happen. Setsu goes on about how it wants to collect information on humans. Inhabiting a Gnosia should just be information about the Gnosia. Information on how humans react to the Gnosia is already information you are collecting. I mean, if we are literally going for everything, then I'd have to suspect Yuri should also have to witness how everyone dies when the ship explodes too. But that seems more like an unlikely course of action. How does the Gnosia kill someone without taking their life? I mean, not a paragraph question there. That's it. How does that work? Sorry, that was actually my last note. I was getting down to my final note here, and I realized that was just me counting poorly when I was making the board for loop 7. Because she says there's 8 people, and then I go through and keep counting. It's like, wait a second, that's 7 people, and then there's 2 people left. And it's like, no, there was 6 people. I'm just bad at counting. Anyway, that was the board, and as I said, we do have some comments. Alright, all of these comments come from episode 3, new crew members, and were taken from the YouTube. Lamba Delta says, the circumstances of all the characters before they get into the ship might be different, but their core personalities are still the same in every loop, so it's still useful to track their personality trait to track Gnosia. About the Gnosia infectee, I remember the episode 1 said the Gnos is something that infected human, turned them into Gnosia, so maybe Gnos is the only thing that can turn human into Gnosia. Not Gnosia can turn human into Gnosia themselves. Rakio is also my favorite character, but their personality is not good for a wolf game. Yeah, well, as I said, like the very beginning of my note, the personality stuff is the hardest thing for me to track because I don't find personalities to be so definitive as to be able to track them as like, Rakio is taking pills, or, these characters like to drink, or this character cooks, or these characters are androgynous. Those are statements of being. Those are the things that you get slapped in certain shows for saying, who are you, when you try and describe yourself with physical terms, right? Whereas personalities are just harder for me. Like I said, that's going to be the thing, and maybe for right now, it's the reason why I'm constantly wrong. Just like my good buddy Rakio here, who is either frozen or killed first in every episode. I'm having serious doubts that Rakio is the most intelligent person on the ship. Anyway, what you said about the infectee thing is something everyone keeps saying, but obviously I can't go back in time and change what I've said already, and I wouldn't, obviously, because the show is telling me one thing, and you guys are telling me a different thing, so I just kind of gotta go with the flow. Alright, next up, we got Weirdly Pictured Being. It's been mentioned that Levi's capabilities are limited due to the Gnosia mess, or assumedly the anti-Gnosia protocol. Additionally, conversations outside of meetings aren't kept on record, probably by Levi, according to episode 1. I assume it's to prevent misunderstandings by the AI that humans not fall into, along with the general premise of the compromise to let the humans figure out who the Gnosia are, instead of just having the ship self-destruct. I don't specifically remember the thing about conversations, but I'll take your word for it. The element is that I wasn't really keeping track of that, so I guess that's important information. Is it, though? It's the element that Levi hasn't taken any direct action at any point because they negotiated the don't commit self-destruct thing. And Levi's consciousness, as far as we know, doesn't transcend timelines. So say, like Setsu saying out loud, I'm the Gnosia. Well, for one thing, Levi probably should have done something about that because Levi could see it. Anyway, the element of them saying that and then moving on to the next timeline means that Levi's information is meaningless at that point. At this point in time, it really feels like the only people that matter in the long-term scope of things is Setsu and Yuri. So, yeah, I'm not putting a lot of faith in Levi anymore. I think when I was getting upset about the scan thing and Levi was before the element of, oh, we're just going to keep looping forever. Before the knowledge that there was no win condition, right? Now that that's at play, nothing really matters until we get like to the tippy top of the silver key stuff. And lastly, just like before, we have a bunch of comments from JL that I'm going to put together into one comment. I will say, JL, I would prefer that if you were going to make comments, you would just edit your first comment and put it all in that. I will see edits. Don't worry about that. It would just make it easier for me to include it in the scroll thing that I have to imagine is happening down below. The characters all have different stats and specialties, so some can use different skills. For example, someone highly intuitive can start a round of say you're human, like Yuri tries to do in this episode, but someone like Rakio, who is min-maxed for logic, can't. Because they're the type of person who, if you told there's a gullible on the ceiling, they'd fall for it or have to rely on the cold hard knowledge that last time someone told them that they were lying rather than being able to sense the lie. There's a gullible on the ceiling? Look, I just went through a whole thing where I told you that I was not well when I was writing all this stuff and I made so many typos, so I'm not going to get you on typos. I'm just trying to figure out the sentence. There's a gullible on the ceiling. Anyway, I also think it's weird that Rakio would fall for that, because that's saying that being logical does not allow you to determine what a lie is. At the same time, Rakio gets taken out first every time, so what the hell am I going to say about that? But it's not like character unique skills, which I don't know that, again, I don't think that you may have picked this up before, JL, so I'm going to say it again. I never played the game. I don't know if this is like D&D stats that you're saying, in which case, like, Rakio has high intelligence, Yoriko has high charisma, like I said in my notes. And I don't know what character unique skills are, because at the moment, I only know the specialty class of engineer, because that's only been recently introduced. As far as I know, this could go the whole Blood on the Clock Tower, Mafia, Werewolf route, where we have like tons of specialty roles, in which case I'm going to start getting super confused. Shigemichi's scanner is exclusively for determining sodium levels, not nausea levels. I don't know if you're referring to anything by that, because I don't remember ever bringing up his scanner, other than the element that looks like a gun. Or did I say something about maybe the nausea had more salt level than anything else? I may have said something like that. But, yeah, I don't... God damn it. I think I may have said that in relation to the scanners that Levi has in certain places, because, again, I got really hung up on the ship scanner not scanning the ship when they were outside. But, again, that's a whole thing. I still have my gripes about that in regards to the element that it's following on game mechanics without really explaining it in-universe. Like those of you who keep telling me that the ship only scans when it goes into warp, and I'm like, why is it going into warp at all? And you're like, well, because it can only scan when it goes into warp. And it's like, that's not an answer. That is the, have you ever watched the movie Idiocracy? Why do plants like Brondo? Because it's got what plants crave. Why do plants crave it? It's because it's Brondo. It's not an answer. Let's see, but these are main stats combined with a bunch of hidden ones under the hood, as well as varying relationship levels to make each character feel unique and like they have certain playstyle, which I'm familiar with. I played a lot of. I mean, that's essentially like, say, a BioWare game, right? You romance a character long enough, and they'll unlock new dialogue with you. I think the Fable series has that. There's a lot of games that do that. I mean, I've only really played maybe one visual novel before, but even that, I think, had that sort of thing. I forget if this is a theory or a spoiler, so I'll put my answer under a gap. If I recall correctly, Gnosia can't infect humans to become Gnosia, they can only kill. If Gnos infect humans to become Gnosia, and the specifics of that are still a big mystery, so I don't need to say any more, because the characters will discuss their theories on how it works later, probably. I mean, that goes into the whole, as I understand it, the Gnosia don't kill, they just maybe send your soul somewhere. And I would say if your body is dead and your soul is going somewhere else, you have been killed. To put it in other terms, you know the Pokemon Eevee, it can evolve into Flareon by being given a Flamestone. Nos is like the Flamestone, but not a stone. A Flareon on its own can't make an Eevee evolve into a Flareon, and Eevee needs to come in contact with the Flamestone. This might be a terrible metaphor. I would say it probably is a terrible metaphor, but fortunately for you, I know just enough Pokemon to make that understandable in my head. I was not a big Pokemon guy. I had like a couple of the playing cards, and I think I saw a couple of episodes on TV, late 90s, and that was it. I know these are your raw thoughts, but there's a slightly weird translation going on. Not like a mistranslation, just a kind of hard to convey in-universe concept, and I'm not sure yet how they Anime's translation is going to handle it. So I'm going to explain it because it's not a spoiler. At the end of the first episode, the Gnosia Twitter account literally started a glossary page explaining it, but it's in Japanese. I mean, that might be something I need to look at. I remember back when I was watching 86, the author of 86 would also post like additional information about the characters or whatever after every episode, to the point that I was like starting, since I watched 86 after it had already come out for some time, I was going back to that page and then like telling Griffin, my co-host at the time, stuff that the author had specifically posted around that time. It's very interesting stuff, so I like when that happens. So again, might have to look there. You'll have to tell me if that stuff is spoilers or not, though, because obviously I don't want to be spoiled. Okay, so both Rakio and Setsu are neither male or female. They are a third gender known as Hensai or pangender. It's something you identify as, not like a thing you can be born. In the game, it gets translated as non-binary, and this is both right and wrong, because that is a non-binary identity, but isn't an umbrella term in the same way. Pan is seen like similar to our idea of being agender. In fact, in episode 1, this is how the Spanish dub TL'd it, and is often, but not always, accompanied with a gender-affirming surgery to remove gendered body parts like the reproductive organs. This is actually a procedure that exists in real life right now too, but is much more niche slash definitely not expected of anyone. It's called nullectomy. Imagine like a Ken doll or angel body ball jointed doll. My problem with that is that you need certain parts of stuff working down there for even non-sexual life, right? You need an exit point for, let's say, waste material. So, yeah, it's hard to imagine a living Ken doll. In episode 2, when Rakio said to Setsu, well then, what was the purpose of being asexual? A line that reads weird because that's a thing people are, not a thing they do. Why they thought that beyond them just kind of being mean about everything in general. I'm sorry, I skipped a line there. This was actually them saying to Setsu, well then, I think it was pointless that you became Pan, which to be fair still won't make sense to you now, but hopefully future scenes with Rakio will contextualize what they thought that beyond them just kind of being mean about everything in general. Most other languages subs have already committed to TLing Han as Han or non-binary. Sorry, I just realized you meant translating when you say TL. I've not come across TL as an abbreviation before, so it just really confused me. I've just been saying TL without understanding, even translating it as Han or non-binary. Or in the case of Portuguese, Han, a kind of non-binary identity. So I'm not sure why the English has yet to clearly name it beyond not a woman and not a man. They hired non-binary actors for the dub, so it's not like Crunchyroll is being run by the CEO of transphobia or something. I mean, I just kind of assumed it was a plot point. I think the element is that you're jumping in to defend a thing that I wouldn't be fully aware of, and you want me to know that this is what's happening and that I shouldn't focus. I guess you just don't want me to focus on it because it's not the actual thing. Sorry, I'm just trying to think of there was a show in the 80s about a little girl who was a robot for the family. or that like the dad of the family had built, like Little Wonder, I think it was called. And I think the possibility exists that I may have been thinking that Setsu was like Little Wonder, a robot that was made that didn't identify as a person. Oh, that's right. I forgot I keep using Janet from A Good Place as my example too, because she always says, I'm not a woman. And that you just don't want me to focus on that for the element of it's a different thing. I know, and if you're like very invested in that sort of stuff, that you would hate for me to watch 20 episodes and refer to this thing as that the entire time and just not get it. But at the same time, I don't know if this is going to be a popular opinion or not, but I'm going to put this out there anyway. I really don't care what you identify as, right? Just you be you. You just be you, and I don't care because it doesn't involve me. So, Rakio being non-gendered, Setsu being non-gendered, all I care about is saying the right thing to identify them, because I don't want to be disrespectful or anything, but at the end of the day, you can be whatever the fuck you want to be. It doesn't bother me. It's just not that big of a point for me. Not something I to focus on, other than the element of if it has anything to do, say, like solving a mystery. Rakio being non-binary, or Han, as you keep putting out there, is as important to me as the element that they take pills or they don't like coffee. It's just an element that makes them them and different from everyone else. So it's not that important to me. Sorry. I don't know if that's something people would be upset about or not, but I'm just throwing that out there. I don't really care. I like Rakio. For Rakio, I don't like Rakio specifically because they're non-binary or Han. Setsu's been an interesting and fun character. Well, I not to say fun. They've been definitely an interesting character. Not because they're not a man, not a woman, right? They're interesting on their own merits. No element of a character is made up by one specific thing. If you're all one thing, then it's too easy to tear you down. You gotta have some other stuff supporting you, making you a well-rounded character. Anyway, that was it for the comments, so I guess there's nothing left to do but to hop on in and see what we get.
But before we get started,
make sure that you hit the like button,
hit that subscribe button,
comment down below to feed that algorithm.
On top of all that, if you want to watch more shows like this, unfiltered,
uncensored,
and uncut,
as well as some early access stuff,
you can check it out over on the Patreon.
It's just $5 a month, but hey, no pressure.
There's zero pressure in order to do that. It's just a little bit of extra support, and it would be greatly appreciated.
Yep, the weird tentacle neck cat. See, from that point of view, it just looks like it's around the back of his head, but we know there's like a thing in his neck. Well, that's a bad modification. I thought you were going to say, like, a transporter accident. I feel like Comet's going to be competing with SQ. Well, I mean, you just literally filled in 2 empty parts in your little imagination. Yeah, I don't know, that is a weird... The element that it's on purpose, and it's an intentional choice, is the weird part. I just assumed, 1, alien, and that's just the way that they are. Or 2, like, transporter accident or something. You know, I got fused with a cat. I'm not, like, trying to shame here or anything. It's just a weird combo because it's like you're 2 living beings together. What if something happens to the cat? Also, does the cat just shit and piss on your shoulder? Like, is it like a pirate having a not a parakeet, a parrot? You just get shit all down the back of your shoulder? When you eat, do you have to make sure that you eat something that isn't poisonous to, like a cat, obviously? And the weird thing is that animals tend to prefer the foods that do them the most harm. So you have to, and it's an extending cat head, right? So it can eat anything that you're trying to like shovel into your own mouth. So, yeah, jeez. And most of the shit that's bad for cats and whatnot is gonna make them shit out. It's just a huge problem. I'm thinking about the logistics of it, not even the look of it. I don't think the look of it is that great either. Except for the fact that it kind of looks like it's going around the back of your neck. And that's kind of cool, because it looks like you constantly have a cat resting on your shoulders.
じゃあ会議を始めるよ。この船に逃げ込んできたのはこの8人。
Two?
グノーシア汚染されている
Yep, there we
の
go.
が2人いる。それで間違いないよね。はい、間違いありません。それを探すの？
って言われてもな。まず確認すべきはエンジニアの存在じゃないのかい。
Come on, Rakio. Survive the first night.
グノーシアを見つける大きな手がかりになる。
エンジニア申請は1名出ております。誰か名乗り出る人はいる？
So, it feels a horrible thing for Levi to point out that there's an engineer.
エンジニアとは船の中枢を司る巫女のような存在。お前たちのためにグノーシアを見出してあげましょう。
ユリコがエンジニア。
エンジニア
I mean, she has been before.
してないはずです。どうしてそんな。2人いるってこと？
いや、申請は1人だけだ。つまり
Again, it's the element that if the ship wants the ship wants the Gnosia to be found, it should not tell anyone that they're engineer. The engineer should just know that they're engineer.
自分が判断されたら終わりだ。
じゃあどちらかは本物のエンジニア、どちらかはグノーシアってことか。
信じなさいといったところで、お前たちは愚かにも信じないのでしょうけどね。
私はグノーシア汚染されていません。どちらかが本物で。
Oh no. Yuriko acted this way when they were the Gnosia last time.
でグノーシアをコールドスリープに追い込めるとか思ってるんじゃないだろうね。え？図星みたいだね。
I mean, that's a bad idea though, because you have a 50-50 chance of taking out your engineer too.
問題は同時に2分の1の確率で。
Thank you, Rakio. I knew you chose you for a reason.
エンジニアはこの8人のうちたった一人。
Although the math is actually wrong. The real engineer might not be saying anything at all.
しかも残った一人を僕たちは本物か偽物か。
We're just assuming that both people that said that they were the engineer are the engineer.
信じないものが出てくる。混乱は免れない。グノーシアの思うツボだ。二人のうちどちらかをコールドスリープにするというのは諸刃の剣って。
Because remember when Rakio first said that they would be the engineer, I thought that they were trying to take heat off of the actual engineer who wouldn't say anything.
どちらが偽物なのか判断する機会はどこかで訪れるよ。必ずね。
でもさ、もたもたしてたら空間転移の最中にグノーシアが本物のエンジニアを襲うんじゃない？
だよな。だってグノーシア側はどっちが本物のエンジニアか分かってる。
Again, it's a good point. If what I said wasn't true.
頭を使いなよ。この状況下で一つ確定していることといえば、グノーシアが襲うのは 100% 人間だということさ。グノーシアがグノーシアを襲うことはないんだよ。
Is he? I'm sorry. Is Rakio suggesting that both of them are the Gnosia?
本物のエンジニアだということさ。それはつまり
残ったエンジニアは 100% グノーシアであることが確定してしまう。だから本物を簡単に襲うことはできない。
やっとその結論にたどり着いたが、まったくうんざりするね。君たちの頭の悪さには。
That was definitely a pill. Now we definitely know that those are pills.
わからない。今の話は納得できたけど。
時間になりました。
Legitimately, you need to get Gina every time to answer the question, are they human? Since we know that they have the effect.
第一印象で僕が怪しいと決めつけているのかと思っていたけど、常にその時の状況と情報から論理的にグノーシアの可能性が高いものを選んでいるだけなんだ。
Oh, excusing Rakio's voting for you every time.
コールドスリープとなるのは
I guess we didn't need to ask the question at all, though I suppose they're gonna be human.
みんなの夢を見ると思う。
なんか納得できねえな。
これはそういうルールなんだ。誰か一人を必ずコールドスリープする。
それは分かってるけどさ、なんでジナなんだよ。別に怪しいところなかっただろ。
それは僕も。
Well, I mean, unless they're gonna show us who voted for who.
みんながなぜジナを選んだか。
They didn't even show us a count.
どうして
I guess we're not doing that anymore.
グノーシアは常に嘘をついている。人間の
They're not always lying, though.
それが
It's not 100% lying. It's not a always tells a lie thing.
その嘘がバレること。話に矛盾があったり、真逆のことを言ったり。
だから黙ってるやつが怪しいっていうのか。
もちろん確証はないよ。でもあまり発言がないと自分は黙って身を潜めみんなを観察している。周りにそう思われる可能性も高いってこと。喋りすぎても危険、喋らなすぎても危険。
なんか嫌な話だな。
Yeah, except that this guy didn't talk very much. Neither did the other new girl.
ジムあるんだろ。
え？
おお、立派だな。
I guess we eventually had to reuse the scene, right?
貨物船？
あ、言ってなかったか。貨物船で働いててな。ちょうどルアンに寄ったところだったんだ。ちなみにコメットは密航者だ。
密航？
ああ、黙ってるって言ったのに。
お、いたのかよ。
What does that even mean in this situation?
まあね。
I thought they got evacuated on this ship.
お前も運動しに来たのか？
シャワー浴びてただけだよ。なんとなくここならシピとユーリがいそうだなと思って。
相変わらず鋭いな。
I don't know what's supposed to be implied by this.
これ持っててくれね。
But she's like looser than SQ or something? Who, by the way, I'm still... Okay, it works in the other direction too.
猫も一緒に走るんだ。
Okay.
何？
その模様って。
ああ、これ模様じゃないよ。これは金の一種だよ。強制年金。
Oh, I thought it was gonna be like the holographic thing that SQ has.
一応言っておくが、触るときは気をつけろよ。体についているときは悪さしねえが、巻き込まれると死ぬぞ。
Oh, okay. That's a thing.
僕の星ってね、普通の人間だと秒単位で死んじゃうようなところなんだ。だから金と一緒に環境に慣れさせるために生まれてから数年ほっとかれるんだ。それで生き残ったものだけが暮らしていけるんだけどさ、この金のせいもあってなかなか惑星の外には出られなくて。
それで俺が密航を手伝って外に出してやった。
So in a way, she's got her own NOS thing going on. It just doesn't infect other people, it just eats other people.
やってあげたのに。
そりゃそうだろう。俺だって危ねえ橋渡るんだ。そのくらいしてもらわねえとな。
調子はどうなの？
悪くはないけどな。こんなことに巻き込まれちまったからしばらくはこのままだ。あと少しだったのにな。
スピはね、猫になろうとしてるんだよ。
Was he gonna put his brain on the cat eventually?
それが夢なんだって。変だよね。
別に変じゃないだろう。ユーリはどう思う？
I gotta admit, I get the feeling that both of these two are Gnosia.
だろう。俺子供の頃から猫に囲まれていたせいか。なんか自分が人間でいる。
I don't mean implicitly because she's like trying to distract us with a naked body and he's like giving his entire fucking life story.
そういうことだったのか。
It's the element that they're the only two that kind of have like alibis for one another. And that there's two Gnosia. The two Gnosia would support each other, right?
コメットだって宇宙船の船長になりたくて家出までしたんじゃねえか。
宇宙船の？
うん。あ、みんなには内緒だよ。恥ずかしいから。
Also, she kind of sucks. Sorry, not the element she's a hot girl and everything, but if the mold on her body is so deadly that you touch it, she should be covered up completely. Not like the most naked person you've ever seen.
部屋あっちじゃなかったっけ？うん、そうだけど、ユーリってさ。 なんかふわふわしてるよね。
ふわふわ？
つかみどころがないっていうか、なんか嘘っぽいっていうか。
僕のことを怪しんでいるの？
どうなの？
Yeah, I guess she really is our like
よ
substitute
くわかんない
SQ.
けど、まあいいや。じゃあねー。
Or, you know, she could wear like a transparent bodysuit to have the same effect. But just, you know, at least keeps your body separate from people touching you. Is that Rockio? Damn it.
有利。ラッキオか。
Can't ever survive either the first meeting or the first
見え
warp.
ていた結果でしょう。ベラベラと余計なことを言い過ぎました。グノーシアにとって格好の標的です。
会議を始めますか？
I would like to survive the first night, please.
まず私から報告がある。昨日は黙っていたけど、私にはドクターの
Alright, new role.
ドクター？
確かにドクターの申請も一人出ているよう
Why
です。
didn't you bring it up in the first night,
私以
Levi?
外にドクターを名乗る人はいない。
See, if Levi says, oh yeah, there's an engineer among you, why didn't they also say doctor?
じゃあ続けるよ。
If they're outing roles.
昨日コールドスリープになったジナのグノーシア反応を調べた。結果は白。ジナは人間だった。
待って、そのドクターというのは？
そうか、説明してなかったね。
I guess you can't let people out of
コール
cryosleep.
ドスリープになった人間がグノーシアだったかどうか判定ができるんだ。エンジニアは生きている人、ドクターはコールドスリープになった人を一人調べられる。両方の情報が揃えば現状把握と絞り込みに使えるはずだ。
I assume you can only do it during a warp, though.
でもさ、ジナが人間だったってことがわかると何か得なことあるの？
得かどうかはわからないけど、ジナとラキオは人間で間違いない。ということは、この6人のうち、グノーシアは2人ということ
Yeah,
が確定
which is helpful.
そのうち一人はエンジニアを名乗っている私かステラのどちらか。そして残る4人の中
Oh,
に
I'm sure
もう
you
一
both
人
tell us what information you got last night.
現状確定してるすべてだね。
それだけじゃない。ステラとユリコは2分の1でグノーシア。残りは4分の1でグノーシア。確率が違う。この場合、どちらを優先すべきなんだ？
昨日ラキオが言ってたよな。エンジニアを名乗ったやつを消すのは愚策だって。
じゃあ今日も候補から外した方がいいってこと？
いや、今日外せば。
Well, ask them what information that they got.
空間転移の間、一人グノーシアに襲われる。
It's the only source of information that we have left, really.
グノーシアと人間が同数になり、船は制圧される。
その前に報告をしたいのですが、よろしいでしょうか？
あ、そうか。それがあったね。
You forget about that. You're just talking about the whole engineer stuff.
シピ様の次元波に異常を感知しました。残念ながらシピ様はグノーシア汚染されています。
I mean, that fits what I was thinking.
ではこちらの調査報告もしましょうか。説にグノーシアの痕跡はありません。取るに足らない存在です。
Which still fits what I was thinking.
どう思う？これってどっちかは嘘でどっちかは本当ってことでしょ？
Oh shit, the fact that both of them are... Well, no, actually.
これで説が本物のドクターであることは確定する。
The element that both of them are saying something I believe to be true just means that I must be wrong.
つまり説は人間。
それはわかるよ。
次にステラが本物だった場合、その判定は真実。シピはグノーシア。もう一人のエンジニアであるユリコもグノーシア。二人以外全員が人間。どちらにしても説は人間で確定する。
そっか。
God, I hate that he always lies, always tells the true thing.
どっちがグノーシアなんだ？
考えるんだ。なぜユリコは説を調べた？
Again, the element that they're both saying the stuff that supports my theory means that my theory must be wrong. It's either that or two normal people are both pretending to be the engineer. Which I don't think they would do.
そうか。僕はユリコが怪しいと思う。
ほう、 続けなさい。
考えてみたんだ。ユリコとステラがグノーシアだった場合、どうやって僕たちを騙そうとするかって。ユリコはセツを人間と報告した。けどそれはセツがドクターを名乗った後、自分を信じさせるために状況に合わせて言った可能性は否定できない。一方ステラはシピをグノーシアだと報告した。
部をわきまえなさい。それは人間であるこやつを。
Yeah, see, I would think the other way around if I was suspecting Yukiko.
意図は明白ではないですか。
So if I suspected Yuriko, I would then suspect that Setsu was also.
理由を教えてほしい。
はい。まずユリコ様を調べるのはやめようと。
Camera angles, man.
仮にグノーシアだとしても、私の立場からするとそういうのは当たり前と思われるからです。
どうして？
二人とも自分が本物のエンジニアだと言ってるんだから、相手を偽物というのは当然だろ。
で、俺にした理由は？
それは特には。
見なさい、しどろもどろではないですか。
いや、僕はこれが正しい反応だと思う。情報の乏しい人間側からしたらね。
Yeah, not everybody acts with perfect information all the time. Saying that you did a thing for no reason doesn't imply that you're the Gnosia.
簡単です。この船において会議を主導する狂言回し。最初に調べる。
Just like you said last loop.
確かに、セツ様が人間かグノーシアかで大きく会議は変わります。
威勢の良さはどうしたのです？もう白旗をあげようというのですか？
そうだね。確かに何一つ間違えていない。でも思った通りだ。理由がちゃんとしすぎている。最初から用意していたように僕は思える。自分がグノーシア
I always hate this part of the argument.
リスク?
The whole your argument's too well thought out. You must have pre-planned this.
シピをグノーシア判定するのはリスクを伴う行為なんだ。
そうか。
全然わかんないよ。
誰かをグノーシア判定するということは、その相手と敵対するということ。
その通り。エンジニアを名乗っているステラはすでにもう一人のエンジニアユリコと敵対している状況だ。その上シピまで敵に回すことになる。6人しかいないのに自分に2票が集まる選択をしているんだ。もしステラがグノーシアだとしたら、いくらでも嘘をつける状況でそんなリスクを負う選択をする。
Yeah, but again, they're not supposing the metagame, which I brought up about the whole engineer thing before. As deep as this is, it feels still surface level to like the meta narrative of a vote. Because remember the first time Rakio claimed to be an engineer when somebody else also did, and I thought that they were trying to defend the engineer by making themselves suspicious? That's too meta for the show right now. I guess at some point the voting rate is going to be not 100%. Speaking of meta, there's only 6 minutes left in the episode, so I gotta kind of wonder. Just go fucking crazy and attack and kill everybody. I don't understand why the Gnosia doesn't like, ah shit, you caught me, and just start going on a murder rampage.
それは自分たちの目で確かめるといいでしょう。そこのお前。
僕？
この星々、無数の世界、無数の可能性があると言います。別のお前と別の私が再び出会い、交えることもあるでしょう。そんな気がします。
See, like I said, I suspect that she might be doing loops too, but maybe she's like a consciousness that does transcend stuff.
Yo.
シピ。
チェックメイトってことだよね。
さすが説、その通りだ。
明日、私がユリコを調べ。
Again, this doesn't make much sense either. I will kill one of you in the night, and just wanders off and they let him do it.
俺をグノーシアだと言ったステラの判定も 真実ということになる。今晩説を襲って消しちまえばなんとかなるかとも思ったんだがな。
I get the idea is that Levi will just destroy the ship, but
有利がいる限りな。じゃない。悪いな、こんなことになっちまって。
シピ。
不思議なもんだな。食って寝て生きてりゃ幸せ。そう思っていたはずなんだけど。
well, I mean, at the end of the day, I was half right about my first thing.
猫になりたいって思いは変わらなくてな。お前たちの勝ちだ。生き残ったんだ。やり残しのねえようにな。
シピ。すまない。
謝るこっちゃねえだろ。
It's also, yeah, another thing that you could either like throw yourself out the airlock and do whatever the hell you want, or cryo freeze yourself.
失敗してもなのに。
何言ってんだ。
いや、その。
頑張れってよ。
Yeah, it just goes against like everything that I've said so far. Why don't they just go crazy and kill everybody? And dude's like, I'm gonna put myself in a cryo sleep. The Gnosia just has like that was a hard G I heard there. Gnosia.
まだまだこれからだね。お互い。
あ。
I still gotta figure out if I need to make a meta board with these two. Damn it, Rakio, you gotta survive longer. My bird. No Setsu? That looks like a new person. Alright, 2 new people again. I'll be honest, the only person I can remember that's in the opening that's not there yet is the dolphin person. Yeah, so I guess the Gnosia isn't... I guess it is just entirely made up of the personality that it came before and is as influenced by that personality as anything. I don't really know at this point. Because again, it just seems to me, you go on a fucking murder rampage if you thought that you were gonna die anyway, and you were already about killing people. Because that's the conceit, right? That it's gonna kill everybody on the ship if we don't let it go. Also, wait a second. Why is the program to blow up the ship, if there's even one Gnosia on board, if, as you guys keep telling me, the Gnosia... the threat of Gnosia is it's spreading. Because essentially you're going to kill an entire ship's worth of people because there's one murderer on board? That sounds stupid. And you guys keep telling me a Gnosia can't spread Nos. Because for me, that was the danger, right? That this is like a plague, essentially. It's a biological threat that could spread itself across planets. But if it doesn't do that, if it's just like literally one person pretending to be somebody else, or 2 people pretending to be somebody else that are just murderers, then fuck, why blow up a whole fucking ship for it? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Additionally, like I said, I don't think we've hit the meta level here yet, because, what was it? When Yuri was the first engineer, and then Rakio says, no, I'm the engineer. I thought that Rakio was making a secondary target because it would be stupid to say that you're an engineer until you were willing to come out with the information that you had gathered. But no, Rakio was neither the Gnosia. Well, I don't think he was. I can't remember off the top of my head. Sorry, they were. I don't think that they were, but I can't remember off the top of my head. So those are the kinds of meta plays that I'm saying aren't getting made. So I don't think that we can suspect at this point in the show, anyway, that that sort of subversive thinking would be at hand. Like I told you before, when I was playing Among Us, I would quite often when it seemed like the majority opinion was against my trader partner, join everybody else in blaming the trader partner. I would throw them under the bus to make myself look innocent so that I could then continue the mission. It's not the greatest play, but it is a play, and it keeps the game going. And I could see eventually getting somewhere down the road and the Gnosia betraying one another, because we've established through many times now the Gnosia won't do that. And what would be the best play? Doing something that's unexpected. If you're building up all of your evidence and information against the thing, and then suddenly the Gnosia takes out another Gnosia, I mean, that throws everything through a loop. You wouldn't know what to think anymore. Everyone would become suspicious again, in which case you've leveled the playing field. I'm happy at least Rakio got to do something. Like, it was their conversation. Well, did they do anything, really? They said some valuable information, that which then led to Yuri coming up with the thing. But essentially, after their speech, Gina got voted for, and we found out Gina was a normal person, thus continuing Rakio's efforts to basically negative effect. As I said, I first thought that it was the two new people only specifically because they entered in with backstories that complemented each other. And it felt like that's sort of like what we had before with Stella, when Stella's like, oh, Yuri saved me and I'm in love with him now. She came up with a backstory that complemented Yuri who's pretending, or not pretending, but is going through like an I have amnesia phase thing, right? So it really worked there, and it felt like a replication of that. Except I guess these two really did have a whole connection thing going on, so... But, it just falls again on the thing that Gnosia protects Gnosia, and that these are two people specifically protecting each other when we know that there are two Gnosia. It was too convenient, and it stood out to me more so than the element of we have two engineers. One of them is a Gnosia, one of them isn't. Because, again, not for nothing, I keep putting my head at metagame level, and clearly that was just a fucking bad idea. Let's see here. Anyway, I think that's gonna be about it for this episode. There's clearly more to break down here, but as we all know, I do that in the notes section next time. So I think for now, I'm gonna call it here. So once again, I have been Theta. This has been Stoneface Reactions, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching another Stoneface Reactions. If you have an idea of another video we could go ahead and watch, go ahead and put it in the comments down below and we'll add it to the wheel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what you thought about this video, what parts you liked. And until then, we'll see you next time. Is this too goofy?